Dave Campbell's Texas Football coming to you live from day 3 of the SEC Media Days. I'm Carter Yates. That is senior college writer Mike Craven. And Mike, we had the main event today, Texas. Can you describe how much different the energy felt today with Texas Longhorns walking in the building?
Yeah, it was different, right? I mean, a lot of the questions the first 2 days were about Texas. They were kind of finally here. A lot of media here from Austin and around the state, obviously. Probably one of the reasons this is in Dallas was to give Texas and Oklahoma media a chance to come here. Sark was up there. He did a little filibuster action, talked for like 15 minutes without any questions.
Like a pro.
Like a pro. The players were here talking, so yeah, it's kind of surreal to see them be a part of this thing.
I think this is the first time SEC Media Days has been west of the Mississippi River, obviously because of Texas. I counted up 7 of the 11 coaches before Texas got here were asked multiple questions about the Texas Longhorns. But I know Sark filibustered up there, but was there any standout thing you heard him say today?
Yeah, him talking about how they're not coming to just compete. Right, they're coming to win. He had kind of joked about Nick Saban saying Texas isn't going to come in and run the SEC. He was like, I'm going to have to talk to him about that a little bit. Because Texas, I think it's easy to forget how far away they were from competing 2 years ago. Like when this was all announced, they were about to have a 5-7 season. It was almost like, holy cow, what is Texas going to do when they get to the SEC? How are they going to be prepared? I would imagine when the media polls release, they're second behind Georgia. And so there's a confidence with Sark and the players now that definitely wasn't there in 2021. It doesn't seem like they have to talk themselves into it anymore. Okay. They know what they're about. They feel confident in what they're about. It's going to be exciting to see what it happens.
So what's the most interesting accomplishment you think he's had to get Texas ready for the SEC ball? And I'm going to make your life harder and say you can't say the line of scrimmage because they didn't even have a spring game 3 years ago when he first got here.
I think it's culture. He talked about how when he first got here, he had to prod guys into the weight room. He had to prod guys into the film room. He had to prod guys to be excited to kind of get to practice and get better. Now he's got to slow them down, right? Like, hey, get out of the weight room a little bit, recover your body, do the small stuff. I think he's just built. John A. Barron they have a leadership council. There's 20 people on it now. Instead of just Bajan and Roshan, it's like half the team, and so they have leaders and it's more of a player-led squad than it was before, and that's because of the coach setting that standard and then being able to have a small enough ego to kind of give it away to the players.
And Steve Sarkisian joked today about the SEC and the rivalries. He's like, it feels like Arkansas fans hate Texas more than they like themselves. But he said the good thing about the SEC is how many teams get to play 3 rivals, every year in the regular season. What are you most excited for with this schedule?
I mean, it's going to A&M. Like the Texas A&M atmosphere is probably going to be a top 5 atmosphere that any of us have ever experienced. It's going to be wild. But going to Arkansas, remember, early on in Sark's tenure, they got humbled in Arkansas, right? And they're a completely different team going into there. That's going to be interesting. Oklahoma, the Red River game's always really fun, right? But as somebody who grew up in the state, who grew up around these programs, to watch Texas A&M for the first time in 12 years is going to be hard to top.
And I think Texas first proved they can compete week to week in the SEC when they beat Alabama and Nick Saban last year. The man taking over for Nick Saban, Kalen DeBoer. I know you know the 48 laws of power and Law 41 states never step into a greater man's shoes. Why is Kalen DeBoer the guy to do this at Alabama?
He just wins, man. It's 102 and 8 or 9 as an FBS head coach, even going back to smaller school stuff. His offenses is great. I know he lost his offensive coordinator, but I think the offense is going to be really good. And then if you look at that roster, it's still Alabama. I think we pulled the fire alarm too soon, right? It was like, oh, what is Alabama going to do? DeBoer's a really good coach. I got to hear him talk a lot during the Sugar Bowl week. And he just seems like a guy who doesn't care about the noise. He's just trying to do a job. And I think that's how you have to do it when you're following Saban. Everybody's going to doubt you. You just got to show up to work, and it seems like that's what he's done.
So I think best dressed today was obviously Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. We got a video on Dave Campbell's Instagram right now of him. But I know it started rocky last year against Texas. He was benched for 1 game. What did you think Jalen Milroe did by the end of the season to really step into that role as a starter?
I covered him when he was at Katy Tompkins, and I was on the recruiting beat, and he was a gravitational player. He was a leader. He was somebody everybody wanted to be around. When he was committed to Texas, I know he helped land a few guys there. He's just one of those dudes that's magnetic. And I'm not surprised he was able to kind of overcome that adversity. That takes some inner belief. That takes some self-confidence. He has plenty of that. He's also a hard worker. And so I love those kind of stories. Those are my favorite kind of stories, right? Because life is hard, and you're going to get knocked down a few times. He's already proven as a young man he's capable of getting himself off the floor. I think Alabama is a favorite to win this conference and a favorite to win the championship again.
Well, Nick Saban's presence still looms large at Alabama, and another one of his assistants, Billy Napier, is at Florida. He's kind of on the hot seat a little bit after the first 2 years, and that schedule does not do him any favors. We were just looking at it. It's like, let's go LSU to Texas to Ole Miss to Florida State at the end. I mean, who do they piss off in the SEC office?
He's got Georgia and Miami in there, too. I mean, I can't think of any other Power 4 teams with 3 other Power 4 games out of conference like that. They play Miami, they play Florida State, and then they play UCF, who just got KJ Jefferson. Gus Malzahn's a really good coach. If they go 8-4, they should be in the playoff. That's how hard that schedule is. If they go 6-6, I think he keeps his job, but that's going to be really, really hard. For me, maybe this is the Texas high school dork in me, Florida, what I'm fascinated with is how quickly they go to DJ Lagway.
Yeah, definitely. Me and Mallory Hartley were talking about that earlier, too. Graham Mertz is here, and obviously Billy Napier said a lot of great things about Graham Mertz, but if it's ripcord pulling time at some point, you got to wonder if DJ Lagway steps in.
If he's trying to save his job, right, the quickest way to do that is start playing Lagway and go like, hey, if you want him back, I got to come back too. He's going to be in the portal. How they start is going to determine a lot. I mean, by the time they play Texas, they may be at an interim if it goes all bad.
Maybe so. And a coach with a lot more leash than that, being it's his first year, is former Oklahoma offensive coordinator Jeff Levy at Mississippi State. What are your expectations for Mississippi State here? I think they've got 2 returning starters out of 22 total starters.
Yeah. And speaking of pissing people off, Mississippi State plays like every SEC team that finished last season ranked. Like, they have one of the toughest schedules in the SEC. It's going to be hard. I'm excited to see what Blake Shapen does in that offense. I think that scheme's going to fit him a lot better than the wide zone that they were running at Baylor. I think he's a better quarterback than people give him credit for. But it's going to take a couple years. It may take a lifetime for Mississippi State. I think those tiers programs are hit hardest by adding Texas and Oklahoma. Because you go from tier 2, tier 3 already, now you're tier 4, tier 5, like a 6-6, 7-5 season is a success. But I don't think that fan base is going to think so. And so it's just going to make life even harder for those type of schools.
Well, that wraps it up from day 3 of SEC Media Days. For senior writer Mike Craven, I'm Carter Yates signing off for Dave Campbell's Texas Football.